Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Behind the Pages with Maggie, breaking barriers one story at a time. First of all, I want to wish everyone an early Merry Christmas. It has been a very difficult time and year for all of us, so I hope you're all staying safe and enjoying this time of festivity with your family. Now, on to our story of the day. I bring to you episode 37 with a book titled Strange Fruit, Billie Holiday and the Power of a Protest Song, written by Gary Gollio and illustrated by Charlotte Riley Webb. Now, I just want to say personally, Miss Billie Holiday has always been my favorite jazz singer. I am a huge fan of jazz and blues, and when I was a little girl, I would listen to all of her songs. My favorites, I definitely love I'll Be Seeing You, April in Paris, Crazy He Calls Me, and definitely one of the most important songs, Strange Fruit. Now, for those of you who do not know who Billie Holiday is, in the 1930s, Billie was known as a performer of jazz and blues music. However, when she first performed her song Strange Fruit, the audience was completely silent. This song was either of jazz or blues. It was a song about injustice, and it would change her life forever. So in this book, we're going to discover how two outsiders, Billie Holiday, a young black woman raised in poverty, and Abel Miracle, the son of Jewish immigrants, combined their talents to create a song that challenged racism and paved the way for civil rights movement. So without further ado, let's get into the story. October 1938, New York City. This time, Billie had enough. Sure, she was grateful for her incredible singing voice, grateful at 23 to have worked with some of the finest jazz musicians in the country, grateful for a few hit records that made her more well-known and able to get better jobs, and grateful to Artie Shaw for hiring her as one of the first black singers to work in an all-white band. But then, everything changed. Billie was singing New York City's famous Blue Room at the Hotel Lincoln. First, the staff told her not to talk with any of the customers. Then, they said she couldn't walk around by herself because someone might think that black people were staying at the hotel. She even had to use the service elevator so guests wouldn't see her and walk through the kitchen to get to the stage. Worst of all was being kept upstairs in a small room before showtime so she wouldn't cause any trouble. Why? Because Billie was furious, and she blamed Artie for not taking her side. Enough had finally become too much. So she quit. Billie had already seen more than her share of hard times. As a baby, she'd been left with an older half-sister by her mother, who was gone for years. At 10, she ended up in a reform school for colored girls, all because of a terrible thing done to her. And when she finally moved to New York City to be with her mother, they were both arrested and Billie sent to jail. She was only 14. Those early years were rough, but what kept her going was music, and especially a love for jazz. All she wanted to do was sing. Billie wasn't going to scrub floors like her mother. She had a plan to be somebody. Jobs in small cafes led to work in nightclubs around New York City. In one place, the audience loved Billie's voice so much they threw money right onto the floor. It was a bright beginning. At just 15, Billie was hired at a popular Harlem music club, moving from table to table. She began singing each song differently each time. Listening to the trumpet and saxophone, she started improvising, using her voice to play with the melody and lyrics. She was going beyond words, and like the other musicians, her singing had more to say than just notes on the page. This was the heart of jazz. Now those who heard her said she sounded like nobody else, but being in the spotlight wasn't easy. Light-skinned Billie once had to put on dark makeup because she looked too white for an all-black band. Another time, white bandmates painted a red dot on her forehead to make her look like a woman from India just so she could stay at the same hotel with them instead of sleeping on the tour bus. Laws separating whites and blacks made things tough for Billie wherever she went. In some places, she might have been killed for even standing next to a white person, on stage or off. She dreamed of having a place to work where she could perform with anyone she wanted and everyone could listen to her sing. 2 months after leaving Artie's band, Billie got her wish. In December of 1938, an unusual new club was set to open in New York City. It was the creation of Barney Josephson, a one-time shoe salesman from New Jersey. Barney had visited Harlem's famous Cotton Club, where the greatest black entertainers in the country performed. He loved the noise and excitement as much as the music. What he didn't love was that black people weren't allowed to sit at the tables or to be customers at all. Here, in the middle of a black neighborhood, was a club meant only for white people. This didn't seem right to Barney, and he decided to do something about it. So on the night before New Year's Eve, Barney opened his own club in Greenwich Village called Cafe Society. And not only was it open to black customers, but it gave them the best seats in the house. Now, black people could see white and black performers like the front of the club, closest to the stage. There was nothing like it, not in New York City and maybe not in the whole country. Early on, Barney had asked Billie to sing at Cafe Society and hired top-notch musicians to back her up. She and the club became an immediate success. Then, Barney got a visit from Abel Mirapol, a high school teacher and songwriter. The son of Jewish immigrants, Abel was outraged by the ongoing racism and violence against African Americans, or American Negroes. Haunted for days by a photo he'd seen, he took up his pen and wrote something called Strange Fruit. It was a song about lynching. When Billie first heard Abel sing Strange Fruit for her, she was unimpressed. The song wasn't jazz and it wasn't really blues, but what did the word pastoral mean anyway? But Barney thought the song was important, and Billie believed in what Cafe Society stood for. She agreed to try out the song, if only as a favor to Barney. Studying the words, Billie thought about her father, a jazz musician who died after being turned away from a whites-only hospital. But what would other people make of the song? At a party in Harlem, Billie sang Strange Fruit, her voice with Abel's words. Everyone in the apartment became quiet, and the smiles left their faces. Billie had her answer. At the club, Barney told Billie that Strange Fruit would be the last song on her set, with no encores to follow. When it was over, she'd quietly leave the stage. That night, waiters froze in place, people stopped talking, and the room was dimmed to near darkness. Southern trees bear a strange fruit, blood on the leaves, and blood at the root. Some people in the audience looked uncomfortable or just confused. Why was there blood on the leaves of a tree? What exactly was this song about? A few people nearly got up from their seats and left. But as Billie continued singing, her face became more expressive. At times she looked tortured, angry, or sad. Her voice pierced the air. The last few words, about a strange and bitter crop, sounded more like a cry of pain. Then the spotlight went out, and Billie was gone. For a few moments, there was nothing but silence. Finally, one person slowly began clapping, followed by another, until the entire room exploded in applause as the audience rose to its feet. Backstage, Billie took a long, deep breath. From that day, Strange Fruit would scorch the minds and hearts of those who heard it. Billie would be cursed, threatened, and assaulted for singing that song in clubs and concert halls throughout the country. She'd tell her worried mother that performing Strange Fruit might make things better, even though she knew that black people had been killed for less. "But you'll be dead," her mother said, to which Billie replied, "Yeah, but I'll feel it. I'll know it in my grave." Southern trees bear a strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root. Black bodies swing in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. Pastoral scene of the gallant South, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth, scent of magnolia sweet and fresh, and the sudden smell of burning flesh. Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather, for the wind to suck, for the sun to rot, for a tree to drop. Here is a strange and bitter crop. And what happened next? News travelled fast as Billie debuted Strange Fruit in early 1939. Even before an article in Time magazine hit the stands, crowds filled the tables at Cafe Society to hear her sing that song. The publicity gave and made Billie a star, and gave her the confidence to go one step further. When a producer and record company refused to record Strange Fruit, she turned to an independent jazz label. Released as a single with another song on the flip side, Strange Fruit eventually sold 1 million copies. It became Billie's best-selling record as well as his signature song, even as most radio stations in America refused to play it. From then on, Billie was often verbally or physically harassed for singing Strange Fruit. She nevertheless insisted that it be written into a contract when performing at clubs and concert halls throughout the United States. Billie referred to Strange Fruit as a personal protest and sang it as a gift for her people to voice their suffering. Close friends said that singing the song made her both sick and upset, after all she'd seen and experienced as a black woman. The song is about lynching, which is the execution, most often by hanging but also by burning or shooting, of a man, woman, or teen by a lawless crowd or mob without due process. Lynching as a term has uncertain origins, but is usually attributed to Charles Lynch, a Virginia planter and justice for the peace who held informal trials of British loyalists during the American Revolutionary War. Between 1882 and 1939, there were nearly 5,000 lynchings in the United States, with almost 75% of those involving black Americans. By the time Abel Meeropol wrote Strange Fruit and Billie sang it, the numbers had dropped considerably, though racism and oppression, both legal and social, remained widespread. Attempts to pass a federal anti-lynching bill in Congress would not succeed until 2005. Strange Fruit brought attention to the deep-rooted problem of racism and spoke to millions of black and white Americans yearning for a more just and civil society. It proved to be a powerful example of protest art and galvanized what would become the civil rights movement of the 1950s and 1960s. Perhaps most important, the story of Strange Fruit demonstrates what can be accomplished when like-minded people focus their talents and energies on a common goal and harness the power of art to create something far greater than themselves. Now, this is also just a biography of who Billie Holiday is. So Billie Holiday lived a rich and remarkable life, darkened by difficulties, but also made bright by her many great successes as a musical artist. As a black woman, her accomplishments were all the more extraordinary given the times in which she lived. Billie was born Eleanora Fagan in 1950. Her father, a jazz guitarist, was not a part of her early life. She met him many years later, and her mother left her in the care of different relatives as she traveled to find work. As a girl, Billie was often in trouble with the law and was even sent to prison for several months at the age of 14. Fortunately, by then she had already heard the music of Louis Armstrong, jazz, and Bessie Smith, blues, experiences that changed her life and inspired her to sing. By 1929, Billie was living with her mother in New York City, a vibrant world of music and the newest jazz. In small clubs and cafes, she began to work the floor, singing at customers' tables for tips and playing with her voice to make each song sound slightly different time after time. This was what made jazz unique and exciting. The spirit of improvisation that Billie learned from listening to trumpet and saxophone players changed their solos to keep a song interesting and alive. When Billie was 17, respected music producer John Hammond heard her sing in Harlem and recognized her talents. He called her a jazz genius and helped her begin a recording career. Even in her early records, I Cried for You, for example, Billie used her voice to connect the melody of a song with the feeling behind the words. The quality of her sound and the emotions she conveyed soon led to hit songs and work with band leaders like Count Basie and Teddy Wilson. She also became friends with jazz greats Lester Young, saxophone, and Ella Fitzgerald, vocals. And in 1938, and only 22, Billie was hired by Artie Shaw as one of the first black women to sing with an all-white band. There, her exposure to segregation and prejudice, particularly in the southern United States, made her keenly aware of racial injustice. When she came to Cafe Society and sang Strange Fruit in early 1939, Billie began to understand the power of song to provoke outrage, encourage change, and inspire healing. In the 1940s, Billie achieved great popular success and came to be regarded as a supreme vocalist, someone whose musical style was imitated and admired by other young musicians and singers. She won many top jazz polls, acted in movies, and wrote some of her own songs. Sadly, as Billie's fame increased, so did her use of alcohol and drugs. After a short period of time in prison, she returned to great popular and critical acclaim, but her health had already begun to suffer. By the time Billie died, in 1959, at the age of 44, she was considered one of the greatest female vocalists and jazz singers of all time. While the difficulties of her life played a part in her death, those painful experiences also made it possible for Billie to perform with a depth of feeling that makes her work unforgettable. Many people have tried to sing Strange Fruit with as much power and tenderness, but few have come close. That is the end of the story and the end of episode 37. I want to thank everyone for coming here and listening to the story of Billie Holiday and how Strange Fruit became one of the most influential songs in the 1930s and the 1940s. Thank you, everyone, very much. I hope you have a Merry Christmas. And this is Behind the Pages with Maggie, breaking barriers one story at a time. See you next time. Goodbye for now.